All right, hey everyone, it's December the 1st, the year 2016. My wife sent me a 22-page letter from a guy by the name of, it's either going to be Schuyler Barbeau or Schuyler Barbeau. I'm going to guess Schuyler, and if I pronounce it wrong, you just please forgive me. I didn't do it on purpose. But this is a young man who's in prison right now. He's a Marine, and it's a long letter, and I thought if I'm going to take the time to read it, I might as well turn on the recorder and publish it to YouTube, and that way you can decide if you want to listen to it. But my wife said it was very informative about the life of this man, his belief system, about how he got betrayed by his best friend, who is a paid government informant, and that piqued my interest because I absolutely detest and abhor and loathe government informants. I can't stand them, and it seems like that's why this young man is in prison right now. But I'll provide you the Google link where you can read this yourself if you don't want to listen to me read it. If I make any mistakes, or it's written in cursive and it's from an actual letter that he wrote to somebody, and somebody scanned it in and uploaded it to Google. So if I mispronounce anything, or if I don't do his letter justice, feel free to go directly to the link and you can read it yourself. I just do the best that I can. And I want to be sensitive to these patriots in prison because I believe they have been targeted by a corrupt, satanic government. So here goes. Schuyler Barbeau, age 30, birthday 7/20. Schuyler Barbeau and Cliven Bundy. There's pictures of him standing next to Cliven. Meet Schuyler Barbeau by Paul Preston, Philip Michael. A little information about Schuyler Barbeau for all to share so people can get to know him outside of media reports. Number 1. Served in the U.S. military as a Marine for 6 years, then in the Army National Guard until his honorable discharge 2 years ago. He was a demolitions expert stationed in Okinawa, Japan for up to 3 years. He was moved up the ranks due to his high moral character, strong work ethics, and his ability to hold fast to his integrity. Number 2, served as a personal security detail to one Clive Bundy during BLM standoff at the Bundy Ranch near Bunkerville, Nevada. Put his life at risk to protect Cliven Bundy and his family from the BLM who were trying to confiscate their land and cattle. Many pictures show his time there. Number 3, threats were made against Mr. Bundy's life and his family, yet Schuyler quit his great job at Boeing, went back to Nevada to put his life at risk to protect Mr. Bundy from a tyrannical government violating the constitutional rights of someone he didn't even know. Number 4, when the Oso mudslide occurred March 22nd, 2014, Schuyler took time off from his job at Boeing to assist in the search and rescued stranded and missing persons buried in the slide debris. Very dangerous, but put his life at risk for people he didn't even know. Number 5, frustrated with the border problems and drug cartel members crossing the border and bleeding violence and drugs into our land and communities, Schuyler, by himself and of his own volition, went down to patrol the border in order to secure it from illegal aliens seeking to breach the border. He made contact with several teams of militia and teamed up with them to defend our country from these cartel and dangerous people seeking to gain illegal entrance. Number 6, again in May this year, BLM was bullying the owners of the Sugar Pine Mine in southwest Oregon. Schuyler went to their defense amongst many other patriots and constitutionalists to protect and defend the rights of these individuals. Number 7, this year, the corrupt local government in Anacortes, Washington, was bullying Predators of the Heart, a non-profit organization that protects and provides sanctuary for exotic wildlife. Threats were made to the innocent animals under the care and direction of Dave Colburn. Schuyler contacted Mr. Colburn, who welcomed the relief of being protected. Number 8, most recently, Schuyler heard of the mistreatment and threats to Mr. and Miss Allen Inc., who provide rehabilitation for discharged service dogs used in the military. Most of them arrived on the brink of death. The Anks also have horses and run an adoption center for these animals. Schuyler has been providing protection and assistance with their operation. Of all of this to say, of Schuyler, one of the most selfless individuals known, is stated most often. He has sacrificed much of his life, his wants, his dreams, living on practically nothing but the graces of others, to protect and defend those in need from a dangerous and tyrannical government, and to educate others not aware of the dangers of our nation faces today. He has set out to expose corruption and toxic government leaders in hopes of creating change in the public servants' offices to return to the roots of our great nation and its Constitution. He is a God-fearing man who loves people, this country, and what it stands for. A written collaboration from many that know him well. For a wealth of information about Schuyler Barbeau, his arrest, and how he was set up, go to www.libertyunderattack.com // Schuyler, SCHUYLER Barbeau, BARBEAU -2 /. Now I'm going to get it. That was an introduction that appears to have been written by someone else. This is going to be, I think, an 11-page letter. This is going to be an 11-page letter written from Schuyler Barbeau from prison. All right, it's the title bio. My full name is Schuyler Pyatte, P-Y-A-T-T-E, Pyatte Barbeau. There is a significance in telling you my middle name that I'll point out later. I was born in Everett, Washington, to Christian parents. After a few years, we moved to Starwood or Stanwood, where I grew up for 14 years or so. We lived outside town, out in the woods. I am the oldest of three brothers and a sister. My childhood mainly consisted of my siblings and I playing in the dirt, playing in the pond, climbing trees, catching dragonflies and snakes, playing army, building forts, making trails, going to church a lot. And when I got into my high school years, I really got into BMX, skateboarding, riding my dad's ATV, and video games like Nintendo 64 and Xbox. My mom was stay at home and my dad worked very hard to provide for our large family. My parents were always active in the church. My mom was a worship team leader singing and playing piano or keyboard. My dad was always helping where he could and worked in the Royal Rangers program, which is just like the Boy Scouts. We always went to Assembly of God and Calvary Chapel churches. I did good enough in school. I excelled in the art, woodshop, PE, and all the hands-on learning type of classes. I did well in class, but I hated doing homework, and because of that, I put no effort into it and got poor grades. I enrolled in an alternative school to graduate earlier, thinking I could handle doing all my schoolwork at home. Nope. Since I did have to go to school every day, I just played around. I think you mean since I didn't have to go to school every day, I just played around. I did have an extra year and got my diploma eventually in the summer of 2005. I left for Marine Corps boot camp October the 16th, my second birthday, at MCRD San Diego. Boot camp was miserable for sure, but I had a blast. I got to be what was called an arts recruit and had the honor of designing and painting drill instructors' cover blocks. If you don't know what a drill instructor cover block is, Google it. My job in the Marines was a 1371 combat engineer. My job consisted of demolitions, wood frame construction, concrete, cinder block construction, wire and log obstacle construction, bunkers, trenches, emplacement of mines, route clearance, minefield clearance, bridging, and felling timber. My engineer school was extensive. Combat engineer is the best job in the Corps. On top of all the engineer stuff, we had to learn and know all the infantry skills because engineer work with the infantry so much. There's lots of cross-training between the two jobs. I also received and participated in training that was more specialized, like explosives and mechanical braking. MOUT, military operations in and urban terrain. All of the high-speed tactics you use you see SWAT doing. I trained with SOTG and EOD. I was first stationed at Camp Hansen in Okinawa, Japan. My unit was the 97th Engineer Support Battalion. After a few weeks, I was moved to the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. The MEU is an amphibious landing force. We board Navy ships and float around the world to be ready at a moment's notice. We sailed around in the Asian Pacific, making stops in different countries to do training with their military and complete humanitarian projects. While stationed in Okinawa, I did 3 deployment cycles, each 6 months. We went to the Philippines twice to rebuild schools, to Australia for a massive work invasion against their army. Oh, a massive mock invasion against their army, and visited Sydney and Brisbane. To South Korea for training, to Hong Kong for a visit, to Cambodia to build 2 bridges and a culvert on a main route, and a few stops in Guam for fuel and supplies. While there, I also applied to join Explosives Ordnance Disposal, EOD, but was denied because they wanted me to get more leadership experience and higher rank. Since I was kind of junior and didn't ever gone to NCO school yet, Hurt Locker is one of my favorite movies. I don't know if it's Hurt or Kurt. Hurt Locker is one of my favorite movies. I left Okinawa in June 2007 and was then stationed at Camp San Mateo, Camp Pendleton, California. I can't read the next word. My unit was 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, Alpha Company. I was then attached to an infantry unit with the 13th MEU. We did 1 7-month deployment over to the Middle East theater. We stopped in Hawaii, Guam, Thailand, and did some private hunting off the Horn of Africa, and did some pirate hunting off the Horn of Africa, and actually captured 2 pirates with our ship. Then we sailed to Oman to train their military, to Qatar to train their military, stopped in Dubai, UAE, so our ship could get repairs, then to Djibouti, Africa for a big training exercise, and then I headed back home, stopping in Thailand, Guam, Hawaii again. I did so much training, doing so much rad stuff in so many cool places. After my 4 years, I determined that I had gotten everything I wanted out of the Marine Corps and that it was time to move on to do something new. I separated in October 2009 and was only out for a short time before I began to be depressed, because I didn't have the camaraderie with my Marine brothers anymore. I missed the military lifestyle, so an opportunity came and I joined the National Guard. I wanted to do the same job as an engineer, so that's what I got. A 12 Bravo combat engineer. My unit was 81st BSTB C Company. On top of all the demolitions and engineer stuff, my unit had been assigned a bunch of Bradley fighting vehicles. I started out as a driver, then moved to a gunner, then spent the last of my time as a Bradley commander. I spent 4 years in the Guard. I had planned to retire at 20 years, but my entire life changed when the Bundy Ranch happened. Outside the military, I got into bodybuilding in 2007. I started in January, and it became my new passion. I had looked at Bodybuilding magazine and decided I want to be like those guys I saw pictured. I decided that it was my goal to complete one day. And then there's a sentence here that's cut off, and it's on page 2. I cannot read it. It's simply cut off. I'm moving on to page 3. If I ever get out of this mess, I want really badly to build an Ultra 4 vehicle and race in the King of Hammers event in California. I also like Baja racing. BJ Baldwin is one of my heroes. He won the last few Baja 1000 races, and he loves the Second Amendment. His recoil videos on YouTube are really good. Guns and shooting are another passion of mine. Guns are a tool for me. I had the dream of getting into 3-gun competitions and long-distance competition. Now I will have all that taken away from me if convicted for having my gun. I was exercising my beloved right to keep and bear arms, and the government doesn't like that, so they are trying to take that right away from me. Pretty ridiculous. Guns were kind of a lifestyle for me. I read all the magazines, liked all the cool companies and groups on Facebook and followed all the gun culture and on Instagram. I responsibly carried in public, but now a big part of my life is being torn away. Some other things that I like and are passionate about include music of all kinds and listening to it through high-end sound systems. I got into sound speakers and other high-end audio equipment when I was maybe 12 years old. I started designing high-end speakers for home theater when I was in high school. One day I want to have my own company building high-end speakers and amplifiers. Science and technology in all fields fascinates me. I hope to see the day when we have space travel and maybe live on the moon or some planet. Sign me up for asteroid mining or exploration of other planets. I love nature, animals, insects, plants, mountains, deserts, trees, and everything National Geographic. My favorite bug is the praying mantis. They have the most character of all the insects I've seen. I really like centipedes too, like the Scolopendra gigantea robusta, the Peruvian giant. They get up to 14 inches long. I love rock climbing, bouldering, and mountain climbing. I've summited a couple of mountains locally, the highest being 7,200 feet. I had planned to attempt Mount Rainier in 2014, but the Bundy Ranch changed everything. I am a scuba licensed, and I love going into the ocean. I love and snorkeled when I was in Okinawa. You get used to the world around you above water, all the mountains, trees, skies, but when you go down under the water, it's a whole new world and experience. I like to make things out of wood and metal. I learned mostly from my dad, watching him always in his shop. I can fix just about anything. I love the smell of wood, sawdust, and freshly ground or welded metal. I love my family and friends, though I wish there was a lot more love and respect among some of them. Family was always the most important thing to me. After I realized it while I was away, when I was in the Marines, my whole family fell apart while I was away. But I wish we could be a big happy family again one day. I love my dog a lot too. So that takes me to becoming a patriot, a real one. It started in 2013. Now the feds would say it was the start of my radicalization, becoming an anti-government extremist, domestic lone wolf terrorist, or whatever. What I say I am is a anti-tyranny, anti-oppression, freedom-loving American. I don't like bullying, whether it's at a school or a rogue government that does it, that does not listen to the voices of the people. Someone at work was always talking about how the government is doing all this stuff to take our rights away. I started becoming curious. At first I didn't care because I felt that it doesn't affect me, so I'm going to keep my head buried in the sand. So selfish not to care about my fellow Americans who are and have been affected by these things. So I started looking into, I can't read that word. I started looking into things and eventually come across the Oath Keepers organization. I thought to myself, okay, this is pretty cool. They are all about the military and law enforcement for their membership and educating all who've sworn the oath about what that oath means and how it relates to the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. So I signed up. Then I found out about the First Amendment Oath Keepers Self-Reliance and Preparedness rally in Idaho. A few weeks later in June, I saw that there was going to be a bunch of guest speakers like Chris Ann Hall, Washington State Representative Matthew Shea, Stuart Rhodes, a sheriff, and a few others. I decided I need to go to find out about what was going on in this new world I was entering. Now the feds would say that this is when my brainwashing or radicalization began. Chris Ann Hall was the most inspiring when she talked about freedom and liberty, the Constitution, and the history surrounding the Revolution. After the rally, I began studying the Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, history, our founding fathers, law, and paying attention to the government. I have a knack for absorbing tons of information and understanding it, so I learned quickly about everything. By the end of summer, decided that I needed to get armed so I could exercise my Second Amendment. I spent about 5 months researching everything about Black Rifle, the AR-15. I also did some research into some of the laws regarding certain kinds of guns, like the National Firearms Act, because I wanted to understand how the government has gun laws when the Second Amendment clearly says our right to have guns shall not be infringed. I wanted to have a select fire short-barreled AR-15 without having to jump through all the hoops to legally own one. I determined after a few weeks worth of research that all those laws and registration requirements only applied to commercially manufactured firearms and the manufacturers and dealers of them, and do not apply to people who make their own guns for their own personal use. Boeing gave us all a $10,000 bonus the next year in February, and so I spent around $5,300 to buy all the best parts I could find. I bought an 80% lower receiver and machined it myself, and then assembled the rifle. I built 2 upper receivers, eventually one short for CQB operations and one long with a scope and bipod for long distance accuracy shooting. I also bought an FNX 45 tactical pistol and ordered a silencer company Octane 45 HD suppressor. I had my dream setup. Then came the Bundy Ranch standoff event. I saw the first reports in my Facebook newsfeed from Pete Santilli and couldn't believe the headlines I was reading, like over 200 federal agents surrounded rancher in Nevada. After the 3rd day and seeing the call for help, I asked for emergency vacation from my manager and went home, packed my gear, and flew. I got down there Friday, the day before the Saturday event. I was invited to work on the personal security detail for Cliven and his family. I did that for 7 days. I had first thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to stand by and watch the feds terrorize these people and get away with it. I swore an oath to protect the Constitution from all enemies, and it extends to the American people. The way I see it, my oath is to protect and defend freedom, my freedom and my people's freedom. I didn't swear an oath to support and defend the United States government. Now the feds would say that I've taken something that they created and twisted it to fit my own deranged ideology. But I say, feds, you created we, and after I turned against you, I would say, feds, you created me, and after I turned against you and started thinking for myself, you had to lock me up. Anyways, I wasn't going to allow the redcoats to terrorize the good people of Nevada. I got home and spent a few weeks thinking about the experience and what to do for the future. I felt like that kind of thing was going to happen again, so I prayed. God give me 2 options, the easy road or the hard road. The easy road for me to go back to my self-serving life of what I was doing before, or the hard road would have me quit everything I had going on in my life to become a full-time patriot, defender of the oppressed. I would be homeless, hungry, going from place to place, having no money, enduring many hardships, and even possibly spend some time in prison, all to help people against tyranny. I decided that since I was always up for a challenge, I would opt for the hard road. I'm pretty comfortable with suffering after 8 years in the military and everything else I've been through in my life, so who better than me? So I quit my career at Boeing, my career in the military, my bodybuilding, everything, packed up everything out of my apartment, made my arrangements, and hit the road. I first went to Las Vegas to meet with some people to figure out starting a private security company. While there, a call to action went out for help patrolling on the Arizona-Mexico border. I spent a few weeks working on the border, then went to California to work on the private security company and help a friend with his gold mining operation. I also doubled on his personal security because he was fearful of retaliation from some county law because he was fighting a lawsuit case against some well-connected neighbors. Someone else was working with us trying to secure funding for the security team we were building. He turned out to be a con artist. He bailed on us when we were at the mining claim for a few days. He was paid thousands of dollars in advance. He stole the documents from our office and left with the legal work half finished to go con someone else. So everything fell apart, so we resorted to mining to try to make a living. We were supposed to have a whole crew of veterans, but some never showed up. Another started out with left. I spent the rest of the summer and fall mining with my friend and learning about law. He taught me so much about dredging and finding gold in the river, and also about commercial law. I was also do a lot of my own research of state and federal law. I helped him with his case a little too. I was asked about at one point to come home by one of my friends back home in Washington who was having some personal health issues. He offered his couch. I agreed and left to help him out like a good friend. He led me to believe he was dying because of 2 brain cysts growing in his head. that all the doctors were not going to be able to do anything because surgery would be too invasive, and that he was just going to have to deal with the pain and die. His body was deteriorating. He lost use of his left side limbs, kidney stones every week, renal failure, multiple seizures a day, unbearable pain, and so he believed he was going to die soon. He wanted me to be home during his last days alive, even requesting that I take care of his wife and 4 daughters after he passed. I have witnesses who would testify that my story is true if he were ever to deny what I'm saying about him. So I left at the end of the October from California to move in with this friend of mine. But before I left, I met a guy who taught me about something called binaural beats. I don't know what I can't read the words. Sometimes his handwriting is a little tough to read. But binaural beats. I told him about my dying friend and asked if these binaural beats could help him. He said absolutely. He put together a custom song and put it on the thumb drive along with software programs so I could use it to help other people as well. When I got to my dying friend's home and got moved in, I instructed him how to use this new experimental treatment for his brain cyst. Over the winter and into the spring, it appeared to work because all of his health problems got better, and as far as I know, to this day, he's alive and well. We also went to the gym a lot, and I helped him get his strength back. Then an opportunity came to move out to a ranch where I could have free rent if I did work like fixing fences and other handyman maintenance type work. Plus, no one would know where I was, so I moved in April. I also was working for a landscaping company at this time. Then I learned about the Sugar Pine Mine situation down in Oregon. Oath Keepers put out a call to action, so I quit my landscaping job, cashed my paycheck, and left for Oregon. My friend Jason Patrick, P3 in parenthesis, which I think stands for Patriotic Political Prisoner, was supposed to go with me, but I ended up having a little hiccup that threw off our schedule when I learned about the Homeland Security. When I learned that Homeland Security was told that I supposedly had a bomb and that I was planning on blowing up a building supposedly. I have zero recollection of ever saying such things to the people involved. It's not something I would even talk about in front of people. I don't know. Common sense. I don't know what or how it happened, and none of it is true. Anything that I may have said ever was misconstrued or misheard. My friend was interviewed by the FBI and told/lied to them about me. So I've discovered since then. I'll cover that shortly. He told me he was interrogated about me, but said he only told them I was a really nice guy and harmless, and that I had no bombs. So fearing a raid and arrest and not wanting to possibly complicate things in Oregon with my presence, I postponed going for a week. I felt there was nothing to worry about, so I left. I spent three or so weeks there doing security at the mine. If you're not familiar with the Sugar Pine Mine operation, Bureau of Land Management officers threatened to burn down the miners' cabin and destroy all their mining equipment. Oath Keepers and other groups were called into action to do security of the mine to protect the miners and ensure due process was received. Matters were dealt with in court, and the BLM and any government can't be trusted. But the BLM and any government can't be trusted not to carry out acts of terrorism against citizens. So it was necessary for we the people to protect ourselves from government abuse. During the operation, we asked the community to submit affidavits to us telling of the BLM's threats and acts of terrorism against them. We received over 80 affidavits documenting the BLM threatening or actually burning people's cabins, confiscating property, and other corruption. Our operations and work were successful. I got back home and immediately learned of a new situation in Cortez, Washington. Dave Colborn owns and operates a Predators of the Heart and exotic animal sanctuary. He also shows and education programs. I too a local news station story and contacted Dave to find out more about his call for help. He told me how the Skagit County commissioners had corruptly and unjustly passed an ordinance banning his animals on behalf of his millionaire neighbor who didn't like listening to the wolves howling every day and night. He told me that the county filed a lawsuit against him and were threatening to take his animals and that he didn't know what to do. I told him I could help. I acted quickly and called my good friend Jason Patrick to help me set up a security operation and help investigate the county for corruption and fraud, and to help get attention on the situation on social media. I packed my stuff and moved onto the property as full-time security and eventually formed a team with a few others. The first thing I did was going down to the county building to get copies of the oath of office for everyone in the county to see who was committing the fraud, a procedure I was performing in California as well. Lo and behold, all three of the county commissioners, the ones who made the ordinance, and the county prosecutor did not have a signed oath of office. I have a video documentation on my Facebook. It's ironic how the county persecutor is the one who filed the complaint for violation against Dave, but doesn't even have a signed oath as is required by Washington constitutions. But I'm a bad man for protecting with my gun citizens from the tyranny of these people. I stayed there for 3 months helping Dave. Things worked out. The county backed off and I guess eventually dropped the case. I cringe at the thought of what might have happened if we never intervened. Dave would have gotten steamrolled and his life destroyed. Also, while at the sanctuary, some friends who ran a German Shepherd and a horse rescue organization put out a request for help co-driving down to California to rescue 3 shepherds from a kill shelter. I was available, so I met up with them and we made the run down there just in time before they were euthanized. Video on my Facebook right after pickup. The dogs were in bad shape from stress and starvation. I got to adopt one of them. His name is Gunner. He turned out to be the most amazing dog and my best friend. Then in August, Operation Big Sky, another Oathkeeper operation, happened in Montana. I packed my gear and headed out. If you're unfamiliar, another miner was threatened, this time by Forest Service, that they would have burned down his cabin and destroy all his mining equipment. Seriously, what is it with the federal and other government always trying to destroy America's hard-working citizens' lives? George, 84 years old, a Vietnam vet, was born on that mine and lived his entire life on that mountain, only leaving to serve in the war. He didn't even know email existed until we showed up and told him about it. George was a very nice man, calm and easygoing, and retained an amazing encyclopedic knowledge of mining and geology. George has since passed away. He reached out for help and a bunch of us Patriots showed up. I stayed there for a couple of weeks and then determined there was no longer a serious threat, so we relinquished the operation to local guys. We just wanted to make sure George remained safe and secure and ensure he received due process. During this time, July to August, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and some of Montana was burning to the ground from all the wildfires. My friend with the horse and dog rescue have their ranch in eastern Washington and told me that there was a big fire burning towards them only a few miles away. They had set up the ranch as a fire base for the firefighters to use and also a donation drop site for all the food, water, supplies being trucked in from around the country for the victims of the fires. They said they could use my help with security of the ranch and helping with the firefighting and distributing the donations to victims. So I left Montana and settled at the ranch and did all the things mentioned. As the summer turned to fall, my friends wanted to file a lawsuit against neighboring county for some stuff they, sheriff deputy and others, did the summer before, but had concern that there would be retaliation. The county, Grant County, is well known as one of the most corrupt in Washington, and ask Gavin Syme. We made arrangements for me to stay as personal security for as long as needed. We served the county, and sure enough, threats came in. In October, I learned of a situation over in Ohio where a family had been raided by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, sheriff, SWAT, state patrol, animal control, basically everyone, in order to confiscate four bears the family had as pets. Now remember what I dealt with at the Predators of the Heart and consider my passion for animals. Well, the same thing was now happening, but at the state level. Governor John Kasich, presidential candidate, Wife was on the board for the U.S. Humane Society, and they were friends with all sorts of animal rights activists. I have already heard there was some corrupt stuff going on in Ohio with the Department of Agriculture. So when I read the account of Ashley Chambers' story is on my Facebook and how the government terrorized the Chamber family and destroyed Daniel's life, I was enraged. Immediately I began making calls. I called the DOA, Chief of Enforcement, and talked with him for about 45 minutes. I told him that we, the people, have the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that they had the right of liberty to have those bears. That he, the chief, was violating his oath to support and defend the Constitution, which secures our rights. He told me that he agreed with me and asked what I would like him to do about it. I said, return the bears and stop the nonsense, to leave the people alone. I had learned that the week prior, another family was raided in the same fashion and their lives destroyed. And there was five more people on a list published in newspapers giving public notice of pending confiscation. I told the chief that I was at the Bundy Ranch standoff and several other operations, and that if they didn't stop terrorizing people, that we the people would rise up to do whatever would be necessary to preserve our freedom. Unfortunately, I was transportation and financially incapacitated at the time, so I couldn't do much myself, but advised some friends over in that area of the country. I put Ohio on notice, and they ceased for a little while. I learned a couple months ago in the newspaper that they went to the Stump Hill Farm Exotic Animal Sanctuary and stole 5 tigers, 2 pumas, 2 baboons, and a chimpanzee. That was in Perry Township, Ohio. See, the government just can't stop terrorizing people. The FBI must told them that I was in a federal detention center and that it was safe to resume animal confiscation operations. All the animals that Department of Agriculture agent sees are taken out of their nice, cozy habitat homes where their owners love and take care of them, and are held in a facility, a rather big concrete building that is more like a prison. I've seen pictures. The animals are malnourished, tortured, abused, neglected, and often die there. Some are shipped out of state. They go from good care to the worst care at the hands of the government, and so many people's lives are torn apart in the wake of the government of destruction. Then I learned about the Hammonds in Oregon. I read the Bundy's blog about the situation, watched all the video update Ammon Bundy was putting out, and communicating with certain friends to learn what was going on. I watched the video showing BLM agents doing controlled burns, setting fire to the brush down in the valley right next to some ranchers' houses and cattle. Then you see the houses and everything burning down. In the video, you see the agent in his gear walking through the brush with a torch, and cows running out of the burning brush with third-degree burns all over their bodies. If watching such videos or hearing such stories doesn't cause a burning rage to develop inside you, then there's something wrong. I'll be open. The level of emotion was unbearable for me. At this point in my story, I've been dealing with the government for over a year and a half. I haven't even told all of the stories of government corruption, extortion, and terrorism that I've seen with my own eyes and heard with my ears. I haven't told of all I've done, and there's much more. So I began preparing to deploy to Oregon if the Hammonds were to decide they were going to stand up to the tyranny. During this time, in October, I had the engine of my Subaru all torn apart, and I needed a lot of money to get my car fixed up and back on the road. My one friend who was dying that I talked about earlier also is a certified mechanic and was helping me fix my car, made a suggestion that I sell my really nice AR-15 that I built, take about $2,000 to fix my car, and use whatever would be left over to buy another rifle. At first, I told him no way. That was my dream rifle. I loved it. It was special to me. However, I later got to thinking about my situation, guarding my friends and their ranch from the sheriff deputy and his friends who were making death threats, and the possibility of security operations for the Hammonds in Oregon, and I decided I needed to upgrade firepower after considering and analyzing who my potential threats were going to be. I told my friend to find me someone at his work who had $5,000 cash who would want my rifle. He asked me what I was planning to buy, and I told him that I found someone locally and was going to buy a Barrett M99 50 cal rifle. I have experience in training shooting Barrett rifles and other long-distance precision weapons from the military and other sources. I explained to him that I was changing my role tactically on the battlefield for future operations, and that I would always bring a long-distance hard target interdiction asset to such operations. And since I am a full-time patriot, always deploying to defend people against tyranny, the asset would always be available. The government always have their like assets, so I felt it necessary to equal the playing field. The Second Amendment right to have militia and to keep and bear arms is, in one way, to balance the federal government's military police power if they abuse it. I told him that as soon as I got my cash and bought the 50, I would be heading to Oregon to get into place early for the potential security or protection operation. Well, it turns out that my friend, in quotes, had been working for the FBI as an informant for all the 8 months, and that all that stuff was recorded in my phone calls. So the FBI must have panicked and made their move to arrest me to prevent me from acquiring a 50 cal rifle and getting down to Oregon. They probably figured I was planning something bad. I didn't have any plans, but things may have been a lot different after ended up happening down there in speculation. So I believe keep in mind this letter is very hard to read and it's smeared. There's places of the letter that's been smeared. I think he's writing, I believe the hand of Providence was involved. So, and I was put in the safest place possible, federal detention. I knew long ago when I decided to build my rifle that there would be a controversy over it and that I would eventually get arrested for it. I knew I would be fighting in court to prove that the Second Amendment does still exist. I felt the need to set the example to everyone that you don't have to be scared of the government and that you don't have to be scared to exercise your rights. Remember what my man Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fear the people, there is liberty. As long as I owned and had that rifle, the government left me alone because I wielded the same power they do. I just want to be left alone to live my life in peace, to exercise my rights and to pursue my happiness without interference. But no, the government can't have people unplugged from their matrix running around happy and all. As soon as I didn't have my rifle anymore, they snatched me up. I had dropped off my rifle at my friend's house so he could handle selling it for me to a guy he worked with. About 2 weeks later, when I was back in the area, I coordinated to meet with him to pick up my cash, and instead of meeting him, I met the FBI and a SWAT team. Just as I had been anticipating for a year and a half, they charged me with possession of machine gun and unregistered short-barreled rifle. Although the whole arrest experience was a little stressful, it was kind of fun, like my first encounter with a drill instructor the day I showed up at a boot camp. They had to plan such a big operation with so many agents just for a little old me. And my poor friend, as I found out later in my discovery, was scared of me and feared for his family that if I ever found out he was working for the FBI to set me up, that I would hurt them. He was my best friend and I loved his family. I lived with them. He asked me to raise his daughter and take care of his family if he were to die from his brain cyst. Obviously, he saw certain qualities in my character that best suited his needs out of everyone else he knows. I'm not mad at him at all and have forgiven him. I only feel sad because he used to be on the same page as me as far as how we feel about the government, and he turned out to be a collaborator, a turncoat, a Tory. He talked a big talk with me, even talking about infiltrating the government to be a man on the inside for the Patriot movement. He knew all the same stuff I did about the government terrorism and acted like he was just as offended by it as I was. He even told me he would have his cousin fly him down to the Bundy Ranch when I was there if I needed extraction. But no, just turned out to be a weak. Just turned out to be a weak. I pity him and hope it eats him up inside for what he did. No matter, forgive and forget. I've been in detention for a while now and have been thinking a lot about what I'm going to do if I ever get out of prison. I am sure others out there are wondering too, including the FBI, Well, I will go back to doing what I was doing before, trying to live a peaceful life, exercising my God-given rights and pursuing happiness, all without interference. I will continue helping my fellow Americans to do the same thing. I will continue to be an activist for liberty and raise my voice, even louder now, against government terrorism. I will continue to be a martyr for the cause of liberty, all till the day they kill me. Then I can go be with my Father in heaven. I swore an oath to protect freedom and the people of the country from all enemies, foreign and domestic, from all enemies that would try to take our freedom away. I am a veteran, a soldier, a Marine, but it's deeper than that for me. Remember how I mentioned and pointed out my middle name, Pyatte? Well, I did a little digging in my family history on my mother's side of the family and learned that Joseph Pyatte Sr. left England after the Revolution started and landed in North Carolina. He immediately joined the North Carolina Minutemen militia unit. I saw a picture of his 6 months enlistment contract. He fought in the Revolution and survived. He had a son, Joseph Pyatte Jr., who later fought in the Civil War against the Northern aggression. From what was explained to me, Joseph Pyatte Jr. and others in the area he lived weren't fighting to keep slaves. They were fighting the Union troops because they were being part of the federal government, were foreigners invading their land and homes. They were fighting intruders. Many people believe the Civil War was about slavery. I'm not saying it wasn't. Just that the war was also about the states resisting an overbearing tyrant federal government. Joseph Pyatte Jr. survived too. The spirit of freedom is still living within me. Resisting tyranny and oppression is in my blood. My fire and passion couldn't be explained any other way. I'd like to go back to my old normal life, but I just care too much. Maybe God has instilled it in me for some reason. I'm not sure why I'm on the path that I've been on. I do know that I have a conscience and it convicts me to do the right thing. It convicts me to take a stand what is not right against bullying. I know that typically I don't like serving others, but that's the position I've been in since I was at the Bundy Ranch, and it forces me to get better at serving others by sacrificing my own desires, changing my attitude. I also know that the government and media try to tell the public that all us patriots are extremists and deranged, but that isn't true. What we are is products of our environment. The environment is tyranny and oppression, and anywhere that environment exists, there will be resistors, divergents that don't fit in, and are outcast. There will be people who say, I'm sick of this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it stop. If the government thinks they're going to eradicate resistance by means of more oppression, they're wrong. If they bring guns, we're going to bring guns. If they're going to bring bombs, we're going to bring bombs. If they're going to use violence, we're going to use violence. How can they expect anything different? Like what Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Men and governments have been trying to impose their will on people since time began, yet they don't seem to get it. It's insanity. They try to oppress people and then there's a revolution. People just want to be free. The government has created me and has been shaping who I am, who I have become. If they want me to go away, they must undo what they've done, change the environment. It's cause and effect. We are the effect and that they have caused. Long live the patriots. Give me liberty or give me death. Schuyler Barbeau. My.